Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Week 14 preview. Week 14, extremely important. If you're right on that cusp of making the playoffs in your league, you got to get it done this week. We're here to help you. We're going to break down every single game on the slate this week for everyone's edification. There are 4 teams on bye. We got the Patriots and the Giants both off this week, as well as the 49ers and the Panthers. So oddly enough, this grouping of teams that leaves you without some kind of primo fantasy assets that have probably gotten you pretty far in your leagues or in your best ball contests thus far. So we're gonna have to figure things out here as we get into Week 14. But we're gonna start things off with a Thursday nighter that is actually a very good Thursday nighter and one in which both teams are on normal rest. We've got the Lions hosting the Cowboys. Huge game for both of these teams. We got the Lions checking in as 3-point favorites. The Cowboys are obviously kind of streaking right now, having beaten both Super Bowl participants from last year in a 4-day span last week, whereas the Lions, it's been a little tough go for them. A couple years ago, after they lost the NFC Championship game to the 49ers, Dan Campbell kind of famously said, like, that could have been our shot. And, a little less than 2 years later, it feels like the window might be closing. I don't know. Hard to say. But the Lions have definitely looked a lot more mortal this regular season than they did in these past 2 years. So they got to have this one as well. They are 3-point favorites in this one. I think the big story, of course, leading us off would be the status of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I believe he is questionable, but you can't really expect them to be 100% after that kind of nasty roll up during the Thanksgiving game.
Right. I do wonder if St. Brown would have had a decent chance of playing if it was, a Sunday game rather than a Thursday. But both games being Thursdays, I don't know, 1 week, especially with no practice, it would be pretty extreme for him to play. I think it does hurt them, of course, quite a bit. I think the Dallas defense maybe is still vulnerable enough, not as vulnerable as before. I mean, Quinnen Williams changes quite a bit, even going to make the secondary play a little bit better than they did before. But this Dallas defense should still be one of the worst, especially against the pass, or importantly in this case anyway, against the pass included, because Jameson Williams, I think you can you don't have to like squint to see in this matchup that, oh yeah, he should get open. He could do actually pretty big damage. The question for me is more like, without St. Brown, without Khalif Raymond, without Brock Wright, even these guys are out. Do the Lions have enough guys on the bench? Do they have enough rep depth to take advantage of however bad this Dallas defense might be, and to keep Goff comfortable, basically? Because as much as Goff might be pretty automatic when things are comfortable, when they're not comfortable, it's asking a lot of him to keep it together. And it's especially asking a lot of him to sort of keep up with what might be a high scoring team on the other side. So while it's easy enough, I think, to imagine like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery kind of going nuts, and the Lions kind of just moving the ball well, scoring consistently, even without their usual means of doing it, without St. Brown, without Sam Laporta, maybe they can get it done in a reconfigured way where the running backs especially do all the do the extra, offsetting lifting. That's not that hard to imagine, but it is still, I think, it's easy to worry about that all. It's like a narrow path at the very least, and especially while the Lions are dealing with a lot of injuries on their offensive line. And the bigger issue either way might be that the Lions defense the Lions defense, their secondary, especially their corner personnel, might not be able to stop the Dallas offense from sort of just scoring at will. And
That's what I'm thinking.
If the Lions are going to win this game, I feel like they need to do it without scoring more than 31 points or something. And Dallas can kind of just go to question mark if the Lions corners don't start looking fundamentally different than they have for basically the last 2 years at this point.
Right. And like last week, I think I mentioned how Jordan Love hadn't his fantasy production had been really lagging for like a month straight, basically since the Steelers game on Sunday Night Football. Like he hadn't had more than like 14 points, fantasy points in a game. He lights up that Detroit secondary pretty convincingly here. So if I'm a Detroit fan, I'm worried about something similar occurring in this spot. It looks like, as far as the betting handle is coming in, uh, it's a pretty even split on both sides of this when it comes to the spread. 55% of the money at DraftKings is coming in on the Cowboys, 45 on the Lions. A little bit heavier action on the Cowboys side of this for the money line.
I think I like Dallas.
I think I do too, and I'm relieved to see that it's not overly public to see that Dallas being just 55% of the spread handle. So it's not like a 70% or anything like that, where you start to get a little bit worried about being way too public donkeyish with it. As far as or wrapping up the Jameson Williams portion of this and like the Lions passing game, we are drinking the JMO here this week at RotoWire. We have him as receiver 8 in our weekly rankings.
I think that's warranted. I guess the slight disclaimer there is I, at this point, am basically a Jameson Williams truther. Like, to me, he should be a 1,300-yard receiver in the NFL, and the sort of up and down week-to-week way that his career has gone, even in this relative high point the last 2 years, the way it's still been sort of up and down and more down points than high points, it feels like totally unnecessary. I'm not trying to make it all Jared Goff's fault. It's not like Jared Goff asked the offense to make Jameson Williams a long range specialist when Goff can't throw long range, especially when in recent weeks, the past month, 5-6 weeks, whatever it's been, when Detroit's been using Jameson Williams on more underneath, including some kind of like contested underneath catches, he's come through in all of them. Yeah. So it was kind of like a made up problem on Detroit's part using Williams out of frame when he could have just been in frame the whole time and producing the whole time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if I remember right, we had him, like you and I, as receiver 1 in his draft class. And, you know, there's been some bumps in the road along the way here, but I think him getting unlocked, like the high points for him, there aren't a ton of receivers out there that can do the type of stuff that he can when he's clicking on all cylinders. So I'm looking for a big game from him in the Detroit backfield tonight. I'm looking for a lot of points and production, of course, on the Cowboys side of things. So fortunately, we get a really good Thursday night football game. So maybe Al Michaels will sound interested and engaged in this one. Moving on over to the Sunday action, we've got the Seahawks and the Falcons. We got the Seahawks as a 7-point favorite on the road. Seahawks obviously they got to play Max Brosmer last week. So basically they're coming off of a bye in their own right. And the Falcons, well, they lost to the Jets. So this feels like we're kind of reaching the end of the Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson era in Atlanta. 7-point favorite. I guess my big question for you, I mean, this one's an eternal question when it comes to the Seahawks backfield, but you know, how do you think this shapes up for Charbonnet and for Kenneth Walker? And then are we going to get Rashid Shaheed involved? Are we going to do that when it comes to Seattle?
I think Shaheed will get involved at some point. I guess, though, we might be seeing something sort of like the Seahawks in the meantime using him like a decoy, or being content to use him like one, and be like, maybe they're not really going to show what he's capable of until the games are a little more higher stakes. Like maybe they view it as Shaheed has, 10, 12 kill shots in a year that we can use. And we want to stack those as much as possible toward the part of the season that's, playoff significant, or the playoffs itself. So I think we have enough of a sample with Rashid Shaheed at the NFL level to know it's not as if it's the Saints system that propelled his numbers. Like, he's a good player, and the degree to which his numbers are disappointing right now is just sort of a measure of how maybe like the implementation, the acclimation process with the Seahawks, and or the fact that I just don't think they've really needed him to do much more. It's like they've they're somewhat conservative as a team in that they're sort of content to win doing as little as possible and banking on like their defense sort of carrying them to the finish line once they have a lead. And maybe this isn't the game where Shaheed gets going, but just the same, if the Falcons just don't pay attention to Shaheed on a go route, then they're going to get that. It's just sometimes it takes upwards of 60, 90, 100 snaps for a defense to screw up to that degree.
And I think the Seahawks, that they got to be towards the bottom, I would imagine, in plays run per game.
Yeah, they're low tempo.
So yeah, like the Shaheed thing is obviously tough for his fantasy investors. I think in a week
pick him
like
in
this,
playoffs DFS. That I think we can do that at least.
Yeah, but for your season long interest, it might be a little bit tricky to rely on him. You might have a more high floor type of option, even if the ceiling is always going to be super appealing in terms of or in regards to Shaheed. Let's see, on the Falcons side, Drake London was not practicing as of Wednesday, still dealing with that PCL issue. I mean, it feels like that one could continue to linger here. We'll see what the injury report looks like on Friday, but without London out there, what can this Falcons passing game accomplish?
I don't know. Probably not that much. I think you mentioned Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, that whole thing being well past expiration date. They got to clear out this front office too. They need to hire you or me. I think John is the like the objective sort of advice to them. They got to fire who's there. Get some people who don't do things like draft Penix and sign Cousins at the same time. In addition to all these other things. To be fair to the Falcons, like I do think their defense could have had a much better, more consistent season. They started out really well. They slapped around the Bills quite notably, but lately they've fallen apart too. So it's like the whole team just sucks. And Kirk Cousins, I don't understand how Kirk Cousins is so toast, but he clearly is. And Darnell Mooney, apparently, even with the blip a couple weeks ago, he's all screwed up from the broken clavicle in training camp or whatever. So this is, in a very real sense, not an NFL team that the Falcons are putting on. At least the non-Bijan, the non-Bijan, non-Pitts reps, skill position wise and quarterback wise. It's just not serious. Like David Sills, what are you doing? How did you end up here? Brandon Dorless, Zach Harrison being out in the front seven makes the defense even worse. So Bijan's going to roll, I suppose, and certainly the Falcons have nothing better to do. But in terms of sort of scoring points and moving the ball at a pace that at all matches the Seahawks, I think maybe for a couple quarters, if they're lucky, the Falcons can do that. And after that, it's just an issue of, well, you can't give 60 touches to Bijan Robinson and Algier. So the other 20 or so that you have to distribute kind of just all go badly.
Yeah, David Sills, great player at West Virginia, horns down legend, but
college DFS, what a cash machine.
Oh, monster. But him in the year 2025 being a starting receiver, it's a bad sign for whatever team that is.
Your front office was it's not even like they were off to Margaritaville. It's like they got kidnapped. They've been taken to another country and no one knows where they are.
That's about where we're at with the Falcons. So I think that kind of covers this game. To be honest, I don't know if there's any like fantasy surprises lurking in this one, and like I don't know if you want to like try to catch lightning in the bottle 2 weeks in a row with AJ Barner maybe being the lead receiver, be my guest. And I would also think if anyone was concerned about JSN last week and not really getting targeted whatsoever, it took him forever to get his first target. The Seahawks just were able to win that game playing in first gear. So don't be worried about that. JSN still a lock top 5 type of receiver for this matchup. Let's get on over to the Ravens and the Steelers. This one in Baltimore. The Ravens are 5.5 point favorites. Both of these teams are atrocious. Both of these teams could also win their division.
Yes. I still think the Ravens can become good if certain things change, but one of those things that they can't, one strain that the Ravens can't subject themselves to for no reason is limiting Derrick Henry when Derrick Henry is moving the ball well. It's frustrating that Todd Monken still can't grasp that, like, with all the success that this Ravens running game has had, you don't abandon it even if it's not working. And of course, abandoning it when it is working is just sort of that's like point shaving territory. It's like, what actually do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
Please be specific. Because it sure looked to me like what he did was take the ball from one player who demonstrated, as we suspected going in, and then he confirmed in the first opportunity he got, he can probably rip off 30-yarders against this defense like multiple times. Like, I don't know, maybe one every 6 carries or something. And then after that was proven true, Todd Monken takes the ball away from Derrick Henry for over an hour. And it's not to, I'm not saying like, well, Lamar Jackson was perfect and it was just that the ball was taken from Derrick Henry and it was all unfair from that point. But when you make the game harder on yourself, like the Ravens did with that strategic choice, you make yourself more vulnerable to the bad luck that can strike any team in any given game. Bad luck like Zay Flowers needlessly pushing off DJ Turner in a way that showed on tape. Yeah, DJ Turner slowed down here. Probably wouldn't have caught him. Probably could have caught the ball anyway, even if he didn't slow down DJ Turner there. But he stuck his hand out, slowed DJ Turner. Now this perfect touchdown pass against the best player on the Cincinnati defense turns 6 points into 0, and the Isaiah Likely fumble.
Dear
things
God.
like that will absolutely turn a game upside down, especially if you're sort of making strategic choices as the Ravens did to make that bad luck hurt as much as possible when it does show up, which is exactly what they did. And that's exactly how you lose a game that should be pretty simple to win, as the Ravens did last week. So it's all bad that Monken is still liable and that John Harbaugh is I think just kind of like consistently, I think he's just like permanently dubious at this point. There are like administrative weights on the Ravens in addition to whatever kind of injury thing Lamar Jackson has going on. So they are vulnerable for various reasons that I don't think are necessary and won't last forever. But in the meantime, they do need to stop hurting themselves with choices like just stop running the ball with Derrick Henry. Let's just stop running the ball with Derrick Henry, even though it's working. That kind of stuff is that can make you lose against any team, including this stupid Steelers team. But the Steelers team is very dumb in their own right. And like the Aaron Rodgers circus is just kind of, what can you even say? It's funny, but we've seen it a lot of times and it's just repeating itself now. I don't know how the Steelers as a team that are entirely profoundly dependent on running the ball are still bad at running the ball and then still are supposed to be competitive consistently. I don't know. It's not that I think the Ravens are a good team or that I trust anyone, in a position of decision-making on that team at this point, but every way that you can doubt the Ravens, I feel like you can just kind of find a worse example of the same genre on the Steelers. And so I'm assuming the Ravens win, but and I guess I would say too, if the Ravens stop doing stupid things, then I would say like, oh yeah, they got this. But in the meantime, I'll say like they'll probably win, but I'm sort of just assuming a lot of failure on Pittsburgh's part too.
Yeah, this is kind of a matchup between two kind of legendary coaches that feel like they're on their last legs. Like it feels like taking the temperature on social media that even like Steelers Nation is kind of done with Tomlin at this point. And I'm sure that Rodgers and this whole thing has been kind of an accelerant to that. But I think when it comes to this game, when Baltimore has the ball, they definitely need to run it more with Henry. In no world should Rasheen Ali be getting more touches than Keaton Mitchell or more snaps. Yeah, foolish. Monken, this goes back to a couple of years ago. I think like his first year as the OC, just not running the ball against the Chiefs whatsoever, even though that's kind of what had gotten Baltimore there in a large respect. A Trey Hendrickson-less Bengals defense getting after the passer the way it did last week does raise some concerns to me when it comes to the Ravens pass protection. I think that's the way that the Steelers can kind of force similar issues for Baltimore's
Yeah.
offense, but you can mitigate that again by running the ball. So we'll see if they're able to hold up their end of the bargain as far as that goes. Injury wise, let's see. What checking in on Nate Wiggins? I think he was limited yesterday. He left that game last week. Definitely need him out there at one of the corner reps if you're Baltimore, because you don't want to get into TJ Tampa land, especially if it's DK Metcalf on the other side or something like that. But this game has a total of 43 and a half. I don't think that we're going to see much in the way of offensive fireworks. These games tend to be rock fights between these two teams for the most part. So I'm expecting something similar this week. I think the Ravens win, but I think the Steelers probably cover that number at 5.5. Let's get on over to Browns Titans.
Okay.
What a game. What a game. We've got the Browns favored by 3.5, even 4.5 at some shops, and a beautiful over under of 33.5 at BetMGM. So like that's about in line with what like the Army Navy game total tends to be.
Yeah. Yeah, probably similar level of like quarterback talent in this game too. I think Cam Ward is actually maybe going to be okay, but like the Sanders stuff, I'm not really buying it. It's like it's good for him. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I've been wrong a lot of times. Maybe this is just another glaring example of that, perhaps. But I'm not expecting either offense to play especially well. And in the part of Cam Ward, I'm not expecting him to play well because I don't know. As much as we love Shamir DK, John, I don't know how much a Shamir DK offense is supposed to work, especially when you kind of have a not so great offensive line, and Myles Garrett's probably going to set the sack record on you with 5 or 6 sacks in this game. It's a lot for Ward, and there are difficulties that Ward has to face that Sanders doesn't have to face on the other side. So Sanders could, if he just doesn't make any big mistakes, he should be on sort of the more favorable plane. And if he just accepts the layups when they're there, he really might look pretty in control in this game, especially if the Browns just kind of don't turn over the ball and let their offensive line lean into the defense and the run game a little bit, get Judkins and Sampson going a little bit in the second half. But short of turnovers, I don't know how either of these teams is supposed to score points in the first half.
No, I don't either. I think we could see a defensive or special teams touchdown.
Shamir DK, John. That's it's always Shamir DK is the answer.
The man who may set the total yardage record held by Darren Sproles if things continue.
I'm sorry, is that something that might happen?
Yeah, I mean a lot of
that'd be
is
incredible.
Fueled by the return yardage, but hey,
well, of course, but that's awesome.
Yeah, so
it's not as if he's he's not Greg Dortching it out here like 19 yards per kick return. Like he's actually blazing.
Yes, so that is awesome. But beyond that, it's hard to find much in the way of fantasy injury. I mean, I think
I've changed my mind. This is a hugely significant game because we can root for both Myles Garrett to set the all-time sack record and Shamir DK to set the all-purpose yardage record. Not in this game, but like it's something. It's like our Cal Raleigh watch kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So he's gonna keep on pace with that one. So that. We just gave you a couple good reasons to keep this one on your quad box on Sunday. Anything else here?
With that said, no.
Okay.
Go Harold Finn and et al. Too. Go guys.
Yes, go get them. All right. Before we get to our next game, which will be Colts Jags, that'll be a fun one. We got a message from our friends over at Dabble. You guys know Dabble. Dabble isn't just another DFS app. It's the ultimate social platform where you can connect with other fantasy sports lovers. Dabble lets you win big with the ability to win up to 5,000 times your money this football season. Starting with Dabble is easy. New users get $25 free when signing up. No deposit necessary. Check out the link in our episode description below and download Dabble today. And we also got a message from our friends at Blue Wire. And we're on to a very monumental game in the AFC South. We've got the Colts going down to Jacksonville to face the Jaguars. The Colts still a slight favorite despite being on the road. And I think that this might be the one where Indianapolis hasn't won down there since like the Obama administration, I want to say like 2014. So it's been a minute. So there's potential for a long streak to be broken here. And again, this one very important because the Jags currently hold the lead in the AFC South at 8-4. They win the tiebreak over Indianapolis right now based on common opponent win percentage, but Indianapolis has the same record as Jacksonville. So huge game here. Daniel Jones, it feels like Indianapolis has, I'm not saying that they're like crashing, but like they definitely aren't running nearly as hot as they were the first like 2 months of the season.
Yeah, I think we can kind of give the Colts some lenience on that. Like we should have known there would be a crunch at some point. Like no team just breezes through a season, no matter how easy their schedule is, no matter how strong they look position by position as the Colts do. You know, throwing in the apparently slightly somewhat fractured fibula for Daniel Jones, like
that's crazy.
Even though he's playing through it and it maybe wasn't like a big problem last week, you have to assume it's some kind of problem. You got to assume he'd pay like a lot of money to have that one just sort of removed from his life if it were like a video game kind of thing where you could do that. But he's got to play through that. Their offensive line is, I think, one thing that if you're looking for reason to believe that the Colts might sort of weather this storm and come out more or less where they hoped to be by the season's end, that offensive line is healthy right now, and I have to believe they're getting pretty solid contributions across the board. I mean, before he had his like personal issues, Braden Smith was considered one of the best right tackles in the NFL. Like maybe he's kind of bouncing back. Tanner Bortolini never should have fallen to the 4th round out of Wisconsin. How does that happen where we've got literally like dozens of examples of Wisconsin offensive linemen who make it in the NFL, even though they're sort of bad athletes and they're all from some crap farm town in Wisconsin or Minnesota, and recruiting services literally didn't know who they were. And they still get to the NFL after going through the Wisconsin offensive line process and are pretty good. Tanner Bortolini set like the 3-cone record for offensive linemen at the combine, and he was a multi-year starter for Wisconsin, and they still let him fall to the 4th round. Like he's not even like fat and unathletic like the criticism is. He's like really athletic this time. He falls to the 4th round for some reason anyway. Big steal for the Colts. So that group, you know, the trenches is such an important part of the equation in any matchup, and the Colts should always grade pretty good or better as long as that's the case. But the Sauce Gardner injury really hurts them, I think. Like part of the formula they were betting so heavily on for a playoff run here was having Gardner and Charvarius Ward at corner, which is nasty. Like when they're both out there, that's brutal for Nico Collins, for instance. Any kind of like bigger boundary receiver hates seeing those two guys. And if one of them's missing and it's Mekhi Blackman instead, that's a problem. So I actually picked the Jaguars to win this game, but it is kind of an attrition and like turnover sort of bet. It's not as if I see the Jaguars on their side just rolling up and down the field. But to be fair to the Colts defense, again, DeForest Buckner, if he's out, that's I assume he still needs another week on the IR. Yeah, it looks like no Buckner. So that Colts defense, not having Sauce Gardner, not having DeForest Buckner, it's down its 2 best players by far. And if Daniel Jones is playing on a partially broken leg, that's enough reason for me to pick the Jaguars, who just kind of like don't have as much working against them at the moment. But right. It's not to say the Jags are safe, because if Trevor goes bozo mode, then obviously like Jonathan Taylor, that offensive line can make you pay a high price.
Before we kind of dig a little deeper into the Jaguars side of this equation, our guy Pouring Henny has a question about starting Devontae Smith or RJ Harvey this week. I'm glad you asked because check this out. We got a little Who Should I Start tool that we just launched here at RotoWire. We've had it for a little over, we have had it at some point this season is when we launched it. It's useful. It's handy. I use it all the time. everyone has start-sit questions. So why don't we go ahead and run this, see what the computer has to say. I love listening to the computer. Ooh, it's close, but RJ
Okay,
Harvey
that's
by a nose.
That's the call, John. That's Harvey was the right pick. So computer, you get to live another day. You get away once again.
Score one for the computer. Look at that. There is the consideration that Pouring Henny also has Jalen Hurts, but I understand.
That's actually an additional reason why I go with Harvey, as it were.
Yeah, honestly, yes. Unless the Eagles button mash again and have Jalen Hurts throw it 50 times, which is certainly possible.
Smith is good. He's awesome. But Harvey, in my opinion, if anything, is going through some of his lowest points. I know the 2 touchdowns is what carried him in his last box score, but the big plays will happen with Harvey eventually. And why not against a Raiders team that has wanted to quit for 6 weeks now?
Yeah, see, bingo. So I think Harvey is the play. That ended up being a really, I like it when it's like almost a 50-50, but a slight lean there. So really good question, but Harvey is our answer. And, you were just mentioning going back to the Jaguars game that, Trevor Lawrence's kind of volatility week to week. So you mentioned, of course, Indianapolis's defensive issues with the injuries, of course, Buckner and Sauce Gardner and so on. So this feels like a good setup where Lawrence won't go bozo mode. Plus, Jacoby Myers has proven to be like a really, really shrewd trade for them. And getting Brenton Strange back has also really helped.
Absolutely. Brenton Strange has been quite good in pretty much every game. And at his highest points, you actually, I think, see reason to think he could establish himself soon and might already be one of the better tight ends in the league. It's crazy that we're at this point with the Jaguars offense and we're sort of like, wow, all the various wild cards and long shots have sort of turned for the better. And then Brian Thomas is the one big problem, the one thing that just will not work no matter what. I don't know. I don't really understand it at this point. Maybe the guy is still hurt with his shoulder thing, whatever that was. Maybe that's going to require surgical repair in the offseason. Maybe he's just depressed. I have no idea. But I guess at this point, I can't really assume something that I certainly would have last year or, going into this year. I can't assume something even like, well, he can beat Mekhi Blackman. He can beat Jonathan Edwards or whoever they're going to play with Sauce Gardner out. I can't really assume that because he also showed last week that he can't really beat whoever Jalen Armour Davis's backup is. I don't remember who it was, Sam Womack or something. So whatever. Thomas could get going here in the sense that like he has all the obvious talent advantages to do it, and the matchup is just ridiculously easy if he doesn't see Charvarius Ward. And if you're the Colts, why would you put Charvarius Ward on Brian Thomas if you can put him on Jacoby Myers, who to do a quick bit of Trevor apologia, I think Jacoby Myers has shown that the drops were a non-Trevor issue with the Jaguars. Jacoby Myers is catching the passes, which of course he's always done. And it was like, well, either Jacoby Myers forgets how to catch passes this week or with the Jags, or Trevor Lawrence's pass completion percentage goes up a little bit. So the little bit extra ability to stay on schedule could help the offense quite a bit. But they still feel to me like they're experimental right now. Like they don't know what they're doing with Thomas. They needed more of a power element in the run game. Like they're running a power run game with 2 speed backs and a crap offensive line. So it's kind of like a compromised position for the Jaguars, no matter how clever Liam Cohen is.
And we've never been huge Bigsby guys, but I feel like he fits that type of scheme. Theoretically,
well, Tootin and Etienne are just so redundant, and it doesn't really suit either. It doesn't suit either of them to have to deal with like the gnarliest carries, running into the teeth of the defense. Etienne is who tends to get stuck with it, and Tootin, to be fair to him, he's taken some kind of thankless carries in recent weeks too. But it's like, shouldn't you have a guy who is sort of built to withstand the thud of running in that area of the field, so that when those more spacious carries are available, your speedy guy is fully rested to fully capitalize on it. This is stuff I'm sure Cohen is like, yeah, no duh, I know that, but in the meantime, I don't understand how this is like 4 years in a row. It's like this. They're putting too much work on ETN, And then it'll be annoying if they get into the offseason, like the past 3 off seasons, where the Jaguars resent Etienne for not being so good at the thing he was never supposed to do in the first place, and that he only ended up having to do for their own administrative, like poor oversight. So whatever. Etienne is good, Tootin is good, but they're both kind of taking more punches than they'd like to right now.
Yeah, it feels like a odd usage for both of them, but there are games like the one against the Chargers where it works beautifully.
Yeah,
sometimes. So
it's a good like it's like an okay emergency situation to end up in, and Etienne and Tootin showed how good they are by sort of answering that call. It's just unfair to them to be sort of be like, okay, now do it 6 more times.
Right. Then it becomes a totally different type of dynamic. But I think you've convinced me. I think I'm on the Jaguars in this matchup as well. So, but especially as a home underdog, I definitely love that with same records. Come on. Let's go Vikings Commanders and what could be the ultimate display of quarterback play that we've ever seen in the NFL. But no, I think we are going to see Jaden Daniels back. He was limited on Wednesday, so again, one of those, keep an eye for Friday to see if he's good to go. But I feel like there's a good chance that he'll be back this week to face this Minnesota defense.
Right. Minnesota, it's tough in my opinion to get a good feel for where their like ability to compete is at and where the morale of the team is at. I don't think these guys are going to exactly quit on O'Connell, and certainly not Flores, but it doesn't matter how much you're trying after a certain point. It's like the mental exhaustion will kind of wear on your bandwidth a little bit, and you'll sort of just make mistakes that are not characteristic of you. So I feel like it's only natural for the Vikings to end up at risk of that sort of state by now, where you go into this year, you do all this hard work, you've got all these good players more or less, and these various reasons to believe we got to the playoffs last year, this year we're better, we're going to be pretty good. And for it to go so wrong as it has, and with such a sort of smothering sense of futility because of the quarterbacks, like for certain, offensive or defensive side of the ball, if you're a Vikings player, for certain it doesn't matter how good I play in this game, it doesn't matter how hard I work, that quarterback, that twerp, he might just kind of give the game to the other team, and we're gonna have to just do all this work for nothing, knowing that it can't be for anything. I think it would be understandable if the Vikings sort of were too deflated to show for their talent to show up on the field and in the box score to a perfect 1-to-1 exchange rate. They might be more like 80 cents on the dollar kind of exchange rate, whereas Washington, they've got all these issues, of course. They've had a really brutal season, but they have the kind of uplift of Daniels coming back, and I think they played the Broncos really close. It's not as if they felt truly hopeless. Like they've
Treylon Burks,
Treylon Burks, Terry McLaurin coming back. I mean, I'm picking the Commanders to win this game. I think they're going to show up with plenty of life, and the Vikings could respond. It's just their quarterback. What can you do?
So just kind of like checking the downstream stuff. I think we've pretty much abandoned hope on the Minnesota running game for the most part, unfortunately.
Pretty much everything, I think. Yeah. The pass catchers.
So I think it was Monday. I was talking to Nick and Jeff on the XM show, and we were just talking about Justin Jefferson, and I alluded to him as like, and this is nothing to do with Jefferson, but he's like the worst type of fantasy asset because you sunk a top 5 pick to get him. Yeah. And just the reality is the offense is so broken that for this week, for us, he's like a low grade wide receiver 3. So like you still kind of feel beholden to starting him, but there's a pretty strong likelihood that you have 3 players right now that you feel better about starting than you do Justin Jefferson, just because of how bad this Minnesota passing game is.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and I don't know. I personally feel like, of course, anyone who knows us knows I can say this, or no, I'm liable to say things like this, but the JJ McCarthy pick is kind of what we get for indulging this just absurd, this patently ridiculous quarterback mania, this quarterback fetishization from the EPA lords and things. It's like if the Vikings just took JJ McCarthy in the earlier mid-second round like he would have gone 10 years ago, they wouldn't have had all the pressure on themselves to, well, now you got to flip Darnold. Now you got to move on from Darnold because this guy, you got to get the rookie quarterback contract on the team to win a Super Bowl. You can't have a guy on the bench for a year or 2 years, especially. So, like, because of that first round top 10 pick or top 12 or whatever, instead of like a second round where they take less pressure to get them on the field, the Vikings ended up in this situation where they're also wasting a prime season of a Hall of Fame receiver and another good receiver in a season where they could have competed for a Super Bowl. And it's sickening. And it's stuff that we have to worry about in an ongoing way with the NFL, because these people will never get fired for running things this way. There will always be a network of people and favors owed that will catapult them just the same way, like the old network of crony coaches, like, why can't Jeff Fisher get fired or whatever? It's like, well, now you just have a version of that where it's McKinsey consultants doing it. And it's never going to stop because the failure is largely the point. Your dissatisfaction with them, what you see as failure in them, is them doing their jobs exactly for the reasons, doing the exact things they were paid to do. So, yeah, it's like Justin Jefferson, Hall of Fame receiver, made completely useless because the team just had to make themselves insolvent doing reckless gambling that was fashionable at the time.
Every week you've got like at least one or two just absolutely gold rants, and that I think was this week's. That was really good. So I don't have anything to add to that. That's
generous, but thank you.
No, it's the best. We do have a very good question again from our guy Pouring Henny in the chat in regards to Jaden Daniels. I don't think we've adjusted our week projections for Jaden just yet. So I think we're just kind of being on the conservative side, but Jaden coming back or Jacoby Brissett this week. We have Brissett as QB 10.
Probably a good problem to have, but I gotta say, I would go with Daniels. I guess if it's in some league where it's 6 points per passing touchdown, okay, well, dang it. I'd go with Daniels. I would. I like Brissett more than I thought I would against that Rams defense, but it's still one of those things. Like, if with McLaurin back too, I mean, I don't know. Daniels could kind of go nuts.
Yeah, that's definitely steering me. My knee jerk was Brissett, but I've become like a Brissett slappy just because.
Yeah, why not?
You're going to get like 45 pass attempts. Like, you can't really
the highest
say
floor of all time.
Yeah. So I love that. Marvin Harrison's back. I mean, maybe that hurts our Michael Wilson interests a little bit, but I feel like the overall offensive environment for Arizona, like passing game, is pretty nice. And you do figure also that they'll be playing from behind against the Rams. So we could get 50 pass attempts. So I'm going to go with Brissett here. I'm going crazy. But I don't think you can go wrong here. I think it is the main thing. I think you have two really, really strong options with high floors and high ceilings this week.
Higher floor with Brissett, I think you can. I think that's like an objective thing. I guess I'm tempted by what I see as a high ceiling with Daniels, especially if the Vikings kind of quit.
Yeah, and you love that it's in a dome as well. So
with McLaurin back and Trey Burks, the guy that they traded AJ Brown for, or that one team did.
that one special team down in Nashville. Let's see here. And for the record, the Vikings slight favorites in that one for reasons. We've got the Dolphins and we've got the Jets. This one in New York. The Dolphins slight road favorites. I feel oogie about that. I don't like the Dolphins as favorites.
Fair enough, but do you like the Jets as neutral picks?
As anything? Yeah.
Against anyone? I don't know. It feels like a lose-lose. Certainly both teams can lose against any team. The Jets have had a weird way of showing up for Aaron Glenn that I guess I have to say doesn't shock me, but I'm kind of surprised at how well they're doing it. Like they don't have guys who have any business starting at a lot of spots. And Adonai Mitchell, I guess there's a lot of interest around him this week. I guess we
never
should
lost
address.
faith.
Never lost the faith. I think what you have to see though is all of this as the single Adonai Mitchell. And when I say all of this, I mean just the ups and downs, including the 2 or 3 weeks before this most recent one. This is just all part of the single unit of the Adonai Mitchell experience. He didn't become better last week, and he wasn't, however bad it might have seemed the 2 weeks before that. He's fast and he gets open and he runs away from people and stuff, and you throw the ball at him ostensibly, and maybe he's just in a different place. But maybe like last week, he's in the place where he's supposed to be. And maybe when he's in the place he's supposed to be, you'll throw him the ball and he'll just drop it. But sometimes he'll be in the place where he's supposed to be and he'll catch the ball. And if he's as open, if he's consistently kind of open more than most receivers in that sample, then last week's outcome can definitely happen. I think you can see it though, as even though he'll always be like an up and down kind of receiver, you can see this as a sort of consolidating his role in the Jets offense, if nothing else. And Tyrod Taylor at quarterback gives the Jets receivers a halfway decent chance of seeing a catchable target on a play. Not as many plays with Fields where it's like he just holds on so long the open guy isn't open anymore. With Tyrod, maybe the pass is kind of off the mark or goes to the wrong guy on the play in question or whatever, but like at least he'll throw the ball, and that's kind of a nice start for Mitchell. And if Mitchell keeps the target share, the targets, the air yards per snap kind of figures stable over the upcoming weeks, I don't think you're chasing points to pick him up on Fab and then put him into your lineup right away. Especially if you're just hurting at receiver for whatever reason. If you're benching some other established receiver to put Mitchell in your lineup, that might be a little more reckless than warranted. But the matchup is fine. I guess you worry the Dolphins pass rush a little bit, but those corners shouldn't be an issue for Mitchell.
I feel like this is a cop out for me because this isn't the DFS show. Genstad and Belangi do that one on Fridays. You should definitely listen to that one. But Mitchell is definitely on my DFS radar for this week, but less so in redraft. I don't know if I can quite get to rolling the dice on him, especially in week 14. But I'm encouraged by him, showing a bit of a pulse since coming over here. So that the Jets, no Garrett Wilson in that offense anymore. Mechie and A.D. Mitchell. Yeah.
Hey, would you start Zay Flowers over Adonai Mitchell?
I'm still doing it. Doing it.
Fair enough. I probably will too. It's just that's my NFFC like scab picking thing of the week where I'm like, maybe I should put Mitchell over Flowers. It would have been right last week, therefore it is right this week also. But yeah, so the Dolphins side of it, it's like we're basically to an Achane offense, Achane only kind of offense at this point, and Waller, I guess, more than Waddle. But I don't like that Mike McDaniel has settled back into that state. Like we have always been Achane fans, and we think he's really, really good, but we don't like him getting every hit that the offense is going to take in a game. It's like, can we spread out the hits a little bit? Yeah, get Ollie in there a little bit. Anyway, Jalen Wright, I don't even care. Just try to get some points through the passing game earlier if they can in this game. Like try not to make Achane the way you both acquire and then seal a lead. Like try to make him part of a mix there.
Well, yeah, because you worry, but you want him to make it through the entirety of this season. I think you if you're the Dolphins offense, I think going up against a Jets defense that plays coordinated, they're well within themselves, but the talent is just lacking there. So I think this should be a decent spot for Miami's offense as well. We have a total of 41.5. I could see this one going over. Honestly, I think that there might be a little bit more fantasy goodness in this game than the total might imply there. Let's move on to our next game. But before then, we got a message from our pals over at Trophy Smack. You dominated your fantasy football league all season long, and now it's time to show it off. Trophy Smack turns your league domination into hardware built to flex. From championship belts, trophies, rings, and chains, they've got everything a true champion needs to make victories unforgettable. I came up 10 points shy of winning the belts in that college league I was telling you about. So I'm still bitter about that. I want like a small belt or something to make me feel better. And don't forget about shaming that league loser. They've got items like high visibility loser vests, embarrassing singlets, and humiliating license plate frames. Trophy Smack fuels the glory and the punishment every league needs to keep the season unforgettable. I don't know. A singlet sounds better than some of my friends do the Waffle House challenge. That sounds miserable. So prefer that. Trophy Smack. Trash talk fades, but hardware lasts forever. You are in this moment, so claim it. Visit TrophySmack.com to lock in your hardware and take 10% off with code ROTOSMACK10. That's TrophySmack.com, Trophy SMACK.com, code ROTOSMACK10, and you can thank us later. We also got a message from some new pals over at Prosper Trading. Every weekend, millions bet on sports hoping to beat the odds. But here's the truth. The house always wins. With trading, you're not betting, you're building. At Prosper Trading Academy, we give you the tools, the education, and the live guidance to actually create an edge. You can control your risk, compound your wins, and trade alongside real pros every single day. Stop gambling on games you can't control. Start trading markets that you can. Visit prospertrading.com/ROTO today and take your shot at real financial growth. Going back to the fantasy punishments, there was one idea bandied about where the loser would have to just take a Greyhound bus to Detroit and then find their way back. I don't think we ever ended up doing that, but that would be a
just
tough
take
one.
the bus back, or that's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean the price is right, and you're already like probably have like your butt groove in the seat. So yeah, might as well at that point. Anywho, we got more football games to talk about, less fantasy punishments. We're trying to make everyone avoid their league punishments, and therefore let's get to Buccaneers Saints. The Bucks 8.5-point favorites at home. I was encouraged by the Bucks last week because they were able to, or Baker Mayfield was able to kind of make it through that one. I was dubious that he would be able to play or play reasonably well in that one with how things looked in that Rams game a couple weeks back when he hurt that non-throwing shoulder, but that looked better. The Saints were able to cover down in Miami last week, but your thoughts here when it comes to the Bucks. I know that Mike Evans returned to practice. I don't think he's going to be ready just yet, but then Chris Godwin also had one of his better days or probably his best day by far, maybe last week as well.
Yeah, Godwin producing like that was pretty encouraging. He's obviously a difference maker when he's healthy, and if he's not making a difference, he's quite healthy. It's a pretty automatic rule. So if he's producing like this, we have maybe some hope, some cause for hope that maybe he's going to start looking like Chris Godwin soon. And if Mike Evans could come back, by the way, that seems like a fast return from a clavicle, even if it's in like the next 3 weeks or something. But if he comes back, if Godwin is Chris Godwin, that would be huge. And the Evans thing would be huge for both Godwin and Egbuka, because I think in the meantime, they're giving Egbuka most of the X reps, which are basically like the highest difficulty ones. And if you're Mike Evans, it's not a big deal. If you're 6'5", 230 and you run a mid or low 4.5, you can just kind of deal with that extra attention because you can, reach so much farther. And the fact that you have to sort of go toward the sideline and the farthest downfield among all the routes and attract the most safety attention doesn't matter as much for Evans because he can just be taller than people. You can just, access parts of the field that a guy like Egbuka cannot. So I don't think Egbuka falling off lately is really, it's not so much like regression as much as this is what happens when you make a guy do something he's not as good at as what he was doing previously. And if that's what if they're going to leave Egbuka with that is sort of to kind of free up Godwin with flanker and slot reps, that could continue to make it hard on Egbuka's efficiency. But in the meantime, like the targets are there. So if they switch that up a little bit and start mixing, I don't know if they have someone else that they can give some of these X routes to, Egbuka could get going. And in any case, getting 2 of those Buccaneers receivers going at once again would be huge just for the budgeting of Baker Mayfield getting back anywhere near his customary standard of production. Lately, he's kind of just been, MacGyvering it the best that he can, but like he's really not in an advantageous position anytime recently. So the Saints defense is not a concern for any of this. Like the Buccaneers are going to be fine, but just, as far as like their playoff ambitions, there's a way I think you can see the struggles of the Buccaneers lately, and then also see it envision pretty easily them kind of just snapping back into last year's form if Evans can come back at some point.
Yeah, I think it's still a high ceiling team if Baker Mayfield is good to go and Mike Evans can get back later on in the season. But right now they're in kind of almost in playoff mode already, because by hook or by crook, the Panthers don't seem to be going away, right? so the Bucks just have like a half game advantage on the Panthers, who are on a bye this week. So weird times that they need to not mess around here, and they need to take care of business against the Saints as big favorites. I think they are the biggest favorite on the board this week. I think people are going to want to hear a little bit your thoughts on Devin Neal on the other side, with Kamara not practicing Wednesday, not boding particularly well for his availability this week. So that should set up Neal with some opportunities.
Yeah, I like Neal, but I'm not sure how viable the role is right now. With the Saints offense is quite busted, and as much as I like Neal, I see him more as like a 50 grade kind of running back eventually, like the kind of guy who can just sort of fit into an offense that's already working well and no one really notice any drop off from the previous person. But if the offense is kind of dead, which the Saints offense is pretty much dead, then I don't know if Neal's the type to escape the tide in that case. Like he might just kind of be stuck with nowhere to go. But I do think as long as he's getting these 50 plus snaps the last 2 weeks, Neal can catch he can have another 5 or 6 catch kind of game, like in week 12 when he had 5 catches against Atlanta. So in PPR, I think you can like Neal a little bit more, but I'm not exactly getting my hopes up for a high yards per carry or much in the way of touchdown opportunity.
Yeah, that's my concern there. So I think PPR, fine enough start. We have him as like RB 30 for this week. So feel okay about starting him if you're pinched on buys or with injuries, but maybe not a ceiling game for him. Rounding out the 1:00 window, we've got the Bengals and the Bills. This one should be pretty fun. We've got a total of 53.5. Obviously, Joe Burrow back in action for your NFFC team, and for the Bengals, generally speaking, and the Bills. I think they set the rushing record, at least against the Steelers in Pittsburgh last week. The Steelers have never given up that many rushing yards at that stadium. So the Bills are just running roughshod over the Steelers. How does this all set up for this game here, where outdoor Buffalo this time of year? I think we have James Cook as our number one flex play this week. So floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't really know what to expect from the Bengals. I think the urgency of the game, or at least sort of the brands involved with this game, especially Burrow, especially Josh Allen, you would assume a sort of playoff-like shootout-prone kind of setting generally, but should be pretty cold. Still don't know what's going on with T. Higgins. Don't really know what's going on with Burrow either. I mean, we saw him play, but we don't know exactly what's going on with his foot or whatever. So other than the Bengals defense being very bad, I don't know what to take for a given about the Bengals. There's a chance, of course, that especially if T. Higgins is playing, there's a chance that maybe it is a shootout and maybe the Bengals can kind of just shoot it out and they could win even a shootout perhaps in a certain particular scenario. But the Bills, you don't need to make as many qualifying statements about. You can see more, median range outcomes for this matchup that suit them. Not to say Chase Brown can't run well against, certainly the Bills' run defense doesn't warrant any benefit of the doubt, but I think the Bills are just a little more convincingly committed and prepared to running at volume. And it's such a funny thing that the Bengals are doing this, like specifically getting rid of Logan Wilson to put 2 4th-round rookies at linebacker who just aren't really that good either. Every NFL team playing the Bengals should just run on them until they show they can stop anything, because I can't remember the last time they did.
No, they are pretty abysmal against the run. Maybe after last week they've climbed their way out of the bottom of like the historical DVOA basement for defenses, but it's still not good. They're going to have to go on the road for a second straight week. They will have a little bit of extended rest, so that makes me feel a little bit better about Burrow being able to kind of hold up his end of the bargain. But the Bills could, theoretically kind of like name their score and also play a bit of keep away too, which I think will be key for them in this spot, because I do think the Bengals will be able to answer, but I do think that the Bills ultimately get this one done. But I feel good about the Bengals keeping this to like a field goal. I think that it was important for Burrow to get some live action last week. And, for me, like, he was missing throws and there were some drops obviously involved too. I don't think he's going to run as cold in the red zone as he did last week. I don't know if he'll get quite as many opportunities in the red zone as he did last week, but counting on him to complete like less than half of his passes in the red zone, I think is not something to bank on going forward. So there's that. Now, do you think that the Bengals can run on the Bills? I still think the Bills are a defense that can be run on, not to the extent that the Bengals can, but feel good about.
Oh, and John, Josh Allen, the thug. He's a thug quarterback. He physically assaults opposing players.
That's right.
He cries to the refs. Number one bad guy, I think, in the NFL.
He is. I've been squatting on this take for many moons at this point, but he is an elite whiner. He's right there with Patrick Mahomes for like having predetermined hand signals for the refs whenever someone touches him. His ability to locate the ref, even if the ref is standing behind him, throw up the hand,
and signal to the ref.
Yeah, he knows.
Didn't even look for the ref.
He just the hands out and the flag follows. So that does make me really annoyed. And
no, if Cam Hayward was not lying, that is a bad. You shouldn't knee people in the stomach. It's a bad thing to do.
Oughtn't do that. And boy, if this is a Romo Nance game, I'm gonna have the volume somewhere else. I can't deal with a Romo game when he's calling the Bills. He just calls him Josh the whole time. Have some professionalism.
Yeah, Tony's a good bit in my opinion, but it is annoying if you don't see it as a bit specifically.
Correct. Yeah. Otherwise, it's pretty grating. All right. Afternoon, we've got the Broncos and the Raiders. Raiders 7.5-point dogs at home. The Raiders actually gave the Broncos a run for their money the first time that they met, but it felt like that was kind of their last gasp. They've looked about as bad as they've been otherwise this whole season since that game. Yeah, I love Brock Bowers. I wish he was playing for somebody else. I love Ashton Genty. I wish he was playing for somebody else. But this is just a rotten roster and coaching staff right now. So I feel like the Broncos. I'm usually loath to take the Broncos with this many points because their offense can run so cold. But I don't think that we get a replay necessarily of that first meeting in Denver.
Yeah, the Raiders, I think, will and should quit pretty much. The whole thing with Pete Carroll, firing everybody but himself and his sons, and the offensive line specifically being so bad and making odd choices. Like there's the whole thing with the Carroll son seemed to be sort of feuding with Jackson Powers Johnson, leading them to bench him for Alex Kappa, who's one of the absolute worst offensive linemen in NFL history. So weird. And if you're a Raiders player who's otherwise a pro and you're showing up to work and you're working hard and you see these Carroll oafs just destroying everything with impunity, it's like that'd be like kind of having to work at a factory or something, and the boss of the factory's son has a fake no-show job at the factory, and you have to watch him just like play darts all day or whatever from the break room while you're working, and you're not getting paid very well for any of this. And why would you work hard for that? Like, you need to see the Carrolls out of here before you show up, I think.
This that feels like one of maybe the Jason Sudeikis subplot from Horrible Bosses, if I'm remembering
I'm sorry, I
correctly.
did not see that one, but it may be an apt comparison for all I know.
I'm pretty sure I'm spot on there, but maybe the chat can find that out for me. But yeah, that is a good kind of summation of where the Raiders are right now. As far as the Broncos are concerned, what can they do against this Raiders defense that maybe they weren't able to last time when they barely squeaked out the win?
Well, I'm an RJ Harvey truther, so I see it as the more the Broncos get him the ball, the sooner he goes to, repeated long range touchdowns. I think if Harvey were to get 2 carries at 40 plus yards in this game, it wouldn't shock me. I think it's kind of in the nature of football in the way that the samples bear out for Harvey to have a slow stretch like he has lately, especially when he doesn't get any volume to work with in any case. But when in a guy like his case, especially, that this running back is capable of peeling off 40-yarders with no notice, I think build in the expectation that it will happen, even if you haven't seen it yet, or at least I need to go a lot longer than we have so far before I start doubting Harvey. Can't do anything about Peyton putting Jaleel McLaughlin on the field and Tyler Bidet on the field. It's indefensible, but Peyton will do it. This is why I keep saying Vance Joseph is the head coach of the Broncos and not Sean Payton. The defense is the team. The offense is a fraud. But I think that the Raiders are bad enough in defense and is likely to sort of quit / run out of gas that Bo Nix should have a much easier game here, in my opinion. And part of that, too, is even though I don't think Nix is very good, I think it was a little weird that he struggled so much the last time, too. It's like the struggles of Nix in the last game, even as a Nix critic, I would kind of suggest maybe that was only a 2 out of 10 kind of thing. Maybe it wasn't really the way it needed to go. And maybe he makes up the difference with the big game here.
Yeah, I do like his setup. I felt like the first time around, it was mostly on him. It didn't feel like it was anything that the Raiders were doing in particular. The Raiders played well defensively that game, but Nix was doing a lot of his own kind of self-inflicting
goofing around.
Yeah, he was going bozo mode in that game. Let's move on over. Got a couple more afternoon games here. Bears-Packers. Packers 6.5-point favorite. So it feels like Vegas has very much bought in on the Packers. I don't know, their kind of domination maybe of the Lions last week is fueling that, because the Bears
or the Bears. It might just be like they're riding the Aaron Rodgers era thing of like the Bears always lose to the Packers.
Yeah, it's got to be, because I don't think that these two teams are that far apart. And I know that there are some metrics out there that said that going into last week, the Bears were the worst 8-3 team of all time. I don't know. They beat the Eagles.
I don't know how you say that. I mean, there's a lot of bad ones, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see them being like in that discussion, sure, but I still think that this is a team that has like an upside. Like if everything starts clicking for the Bears, I do think that they are a good team. I think that they've gotten by, partially on schedule or other teams kind of making the critical error while the Bears just kind of wait for them to do that. But last week was not one of those instances. I didn't think. I thought that they kind of beat the Eagles fair and square. I think they had like both Monangai and Swift had huge games.
They were rolling. Yeah.
Yeah. They're calling them the Bruise Brothers there in Chicago. I like that.
Is that an irony thing? Because they're both kind of undersized.
Oh, the Blues Brothers is a very like Chicagoland movie.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if it was more like Bash Brothers, but it's like they're small, so it's funny or something.
Oh, I mean, we can get down with that as well, but I think it's more the reference to the Jim Belushi, Dan Aykroyd classic. But enough preamble. What's going to happen in this game?
The spread does make you wonder, or at least from my position of limited knowledge, it does make me wonder, like, what do I not know that is still probably true? And I really don't know what I can't figure it out. I'm not getting anywhere closer the more that I think about it. It's not that I don't it's not that I don't think the Packers can win to that degree. It's more like, at the very least, the Packers have enough injuries. The Bears, by the way, are getting a little healthier. I guess I got to see what's going on with Odunze and Monangai in practice, but their offensive line is healthy. Their defense is the cornerback personnel crucially is finally getting healthy. Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon definitely help things by getting back. So that secondary for the Bears overall is looking quite good at the moment, and their pass rush at least occasionally shows up. So even if their run defense is bad, the Bears defense is not harmless. But maybe the answer to the question in this case, assuming Vegas is more or less correct, maybe the answer is just the Packers are prepared to run at a level that really is too much for the Bears defense, to the point that their pass rush and coverage ability is made irrelevant or is undermined so bad with the play action setups, things like that. Because I definitely don't see the Packers airing it out with Love in any given game. It's like the best case with Jordan Love is what you got last week, where he makes some big plays and the touchdowns happen often. But if you need him to throw 40 times, I think you're already in a lot of trouble. And their offensive line is still kind of shuffling a little bit with all the the ridiculous number of injuries they've had. They're without Devontae Wyatt now, which that to me seems like a big deal. So it's like if the Packers run defense becomes a liability here, allowing the Bears to kind of run the same script they've run for weeks now, where they sort of just say, screw it, just give it to Swift or Monungai or whatever, whoever's in there, just give them the ball. Like that might work against the Packers. And if it does to any significant extent, then I don't know how the Packers cover. I think in that case, the Packers have to worry about winning.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I think the Bears are going to try to throw everything at them as far as the run game goes. And even though he is the quarterback of the Bears, I still think of Caleb Williams like he's not a good cold weather quarterback yet. So
he's not good in general right now. I really do think he's shown some progress in terms of like he seems to be working on the things that he needs to, and he's trying to accept and adapt to the fact that the way you played in college won't work here. But in the meantime, he's also still kind of finding like, I'm not as good at this way of playing though. Right. But you got to end up in that place and make yourself grow out of it. But in the meantime, it's like going to Lambeau isn't going to help any of those issues become easier on him.
No, so the Bears are definitely going to need to run it here. I am going to take the Bears though against the spread. I think I want to buy in on the Packers, but we have a little ways to go yet. Still, we've got the Rams and the Cardinals next. The Rams 7.5-point favorites on the road here.
Well, that seems like a lot of points, especially for a team that struggled so much against the Panthers, and especially when Jacoby Brissett is going over 40 pass attempts every game. It's not just an issue of like spamming pass attempts. To throw that many pass attempts at all, you have to be completing a certain number and converting a certain percentage of third downs. You have to be moving the chains a certain amount to have the ball long enough to throw it that much. So if Brissett's always getting to that point, or if we're taking it for a given by now that he gets to that point, then the Rams can only be so far ahead, in my opinion. And I think for the Rams to safely cover that, they more so need to cause a script where Brissett does not throw 49 passes. He only throws 38 or whatever. And that might be enough of an indication of, incomplete passes, missed third downs, whatever, maybe a turnover or something like that. It also might indicate a script where the Cardinals defense didn't play as well as it's used to and sort of spent more time on the field than it's used to. I was actually looking at the Cardinals defense a lot because I was trying to figure out what makes them go exactly. Darius Robinson, who is like one of my least favorite first round picks in a long time, is like he's a very visible zero in the defense. And I was just like, how the hell are they as good as they are at defense if this guy's playing so much? And if Jordan Burch doesn't really seem to do anything that I can tell. And it seems like their defense is basically 39-year-old Calais Campbell and Josh Sweat playing out of their minds. And that's and the corners are good, but the linebackers are kind of crap. They only have Sweat and Calais Campbell in the pass rush. I don't know why the run defense would be particularly good. So I think the Rams should be able to run in this game. I know the Blake Corum emergence is bad for Kyron Williams, but I think it's good for the Rams. Corum is objectively quite a bit more athletic than Kyron Williams, so it gives a bit of a change up kind of effect when Williams is out there and a little bit more of a fastball when Corum's out there. Keeping them both fresh, obviously, is a reason in itself, in my opinion, to get them both involved. But I think if Stafford needs to carry the Rams here, as much as you would sort of say, well, he got it out of the way last week. He's settled in now. He got his turnovers out of the way. I don't want to assume that, because the Cardinals' corners and safety personnel is quite good, and if the run is there, just take it. I think you're swimming against the tide if you try to throw the ball too much as the Rams here.
So we talked about a couple weeks ago the Rams implementation of the 13 personnel with having 3 tight ends out there, and another kind of McVayism that we bemoaned a little bit as Kyron doubters over the years is, he just has such a monopoly on that backfield. But do you feel like McVay is maybe changing his stance in light of the way that Corum is playing, to where maybe we're not going to get a true split or anything like that, but enough to where Corum might be on your flex radar?
Yeah, I think Kyron's still a safe running back 2, an occasional running back 1, and Corum, even when that is true, is getting close to flex consideration. It's not the flex start that you want to go toward, but if you got some injuries or bye weeks or whatever, you could be in a worse place. And certainly there are some scenarios where Corum could have legitimately decent upside, and there are some scenarios too where his floor might settle in to more of a clear flex play kind of territory. But 7 carries a week isn't enough. With that said, the McVayism that you mentioned, the rush, the weird clinging to one running back at a time, which predates Kyron Williams, by the way. They also did that with Sony Michel, of all people, so that was always weird. But it never made much sense to me. I know Sean McVay had his reason, but I didn't believe his reason was as sound as he might have thought it was. Whatever security he feels from seeing the same running back over and over, whatever he thinks that contributes to the blitz pickup or whatever, I just doubt it. And I think he put those things at the priority expense of yards from scrimmage, which is basically all I care about ever. And I think even getting Blake Corum on the field for the 7, 8, 10 carries a game, that's such a huge that's an unmistakable departure from the past policy, the Kyron Williams and even the Sony Michel policy, because in those instances, the backup running back would not even play 10 snaps, like let alone 10 carries. They wouldn't play 10 snaps. They wouldn't play 5 snaps. So for Kyron Williams to go from 60 snaps a game down to 40, even though it leaves him still in like clear starting running back category, and it could keep him in fantasy running back 1 territory, part of what drove Kyron Williams' fantasy value the prior 2 years was the fact that he'd play 60 snaps every single game. So those days are gone, whatever else it might mean.
Yeah. So that's a good breakdown on like a bit of a philosophical shift of the backfield usage there in LA. And, lastly, there's no need to look at the backfield for the Cardinals. They're just going to throw it, and we got to live with it. And that I like living with it. I'm enjoying this Brissett season. I might be the only one, but I'm digging it.
In this NFL, it's one of the better products, even though it's by accident and no one really understands why it's happening.
Yeah, like if you have to put like all the bad teams in a bucket as far as watchability is concerned, the Cardinals are probably my favorite one to watch these days. We've got the Texans and the Chiefs on Sunday night. The Chiefs, both of these teams really kind of fighting for their playoff lives. Let me grab the standings real quick. So the Texans are just on the outside looking in and at the 8th spot, but we could kind of start to see some jumbling depending on that Jacksonville Indianapolis game. If Jacksonville is able to win that one, we know that the Texans have a win banked over Indianapolis, and I believe they split with the Jags. And then the Chiefs, look at the Chiefs down there, 6-6. So the division's pretty much out the window. They pretty much need to win out to get a wild card spot, and it's going to be tough because it's I don't think it's a great AFC by any means, but a lot of banked wins ahead of them, and they lost to the Bills. If they lose the head-to-head to the Texans, that's a big problem for the Chiefs here. So it's must-win time. It was must-win for them against Indianapolis, and they did it. But they also dropped last week's game to the Cowboys. So this does not feel like a particularly imposing Chiefs team. And dude, this Texans defense is just awesome.
Yeah, it is. And I think you got to worry about The Chiefs' offensive line not having their left tackle, the right tackle being questionable, and Trey Smith, who was out last week, also looking questionable for this week. So letting Mike Caliendo onto the field as the Chiefs in general has proven to be kind of like a red line where it's like, oh God, nothing works now. And I don't even think it's like Caliendo's fault specifically. It is not his fault. He's not supposed to play. But when he does play, it shows that there has been the depth of the Chiefs' offensive line has been tested such that they are at a point where generally in the past they have not been able to deal, or certainly not to the standards that they were accustomed to immediately before that. So the offensive line was definitely it was taken for granted. It always is, but it was a constant part of the Chiefs' formula at their peak. They don't have that right now. Of course, they don't have a Tyreek Hill analog either. So there's real factors that explain why Patrick Mahomes might not be Patrick Mahomes as we know him, even if you still take it as a given that as I do, that he's still clearly the best quarterback in the league. It's like that just doesn't, that currency doesn't carry you as far as it used to, or might have in some other cases. So even though, while I'm not expecting the Houston offense to do all that well on their own part, like you said, that Houston defense is a kind of nasty that even if the Chiefs offensive line were fully healthy, you'd have to give Mahomes some leash to say, like, well, if he has a bad game, it's not really all his fault. I mean, Will Anderson was ripping his head off over and over. What can you do? But you have that scenario meaningfully closer yet because of those offensive line issues. And so in the case of the Chiefs, if for them to win, I feel like it needs to come down to Mahomes doing something, the quarterback somehow getting them out of it. For the Texans, you don't need to say that. And that's not me being a CJ Stroud doubter at all. It's more like I still don't trust that offensive line one little bit at all against any defense. And I think the Houston offense is not serious in a way. It's like it just isn't a serious way. It's the opposite of like what the Lions do. It's like they're going in with like a crap offensive line of retreads and just sort of crossing your fingers and like, whoops, that didn't work. Now we can't do anything for an entire year. That's just where they are. And until the offseason, they need their defense to win games for them. It's just, this might be one such game.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to look back that far to see the defense, kind of overwhelming an elite quarterback. I mean, their game against the Bills the other week was all time, or you look back to the AFC Championship game in 2015 where the Broncos were just beating up Tom Brady. Like we could see something similar to that here, especially
this Chiefs team, John, against the Broncos 2 or 3 weeks ago or whatever. It's like it's largely that script, but just kind of worse now because your offensive line is more injured.
Yes, that is a big problem going into this game. So I like the Texans. If I can get them at the 3.5, if that holds, so you're insulated with a field goal loss, that's probably the direction that I'm going with it. I do need to ask you something of a heady fantasy football question. This is a fantasy football show. What do you make of the Texans group of pass catchers outside of Nico Collins? Anyone remotely startable this week? Anyone that draws a good matchup against their corresponding cornerback?
Well, Jaden Higgins, I'm a fan of pretty much all the Texans receivers, other than Xavier Hutchinson, who I liked as a prospect, but I've lost the faith on since then. Christian Kirk, his hamstring is just like, a coin flip every single play. Just don't know if his talent's going to show up. But Higgins, if they're not screwing with his snap count, if they're not, as they were earlier in the year, leaving him on the bench behind Justin Watson, Xavier Hutchinson, Braxton Berrios, whoever they apparently could find laying around at the bottom of their depth chart. If those players are no longer taking snaps from Higgins, then there's no obstacle in Higgins's way anymore. So I think Higgins is, he really isn't quite as fast at top speed as Nico Collins, but every other way, he's close to a carbon copy and maybe with even more ability as an underneath and intermediate target. So Higgins has only kind of validated the Texans lately for the increase in playing time he's seen. I know coaches tend to see it as, we gave him that playing time because he got better in practice. No, he just could have done this the whole time, and now you're not pointlessly leaving him on the bench. So if you stop leaving him on the bench, he'll tend to just give you more reasons to leave him off the bench. And I'm hopeful, not to jinx the guy, that we're at that point with Higgins where we can just say like, well, at least he's going to play now.
Yeah, that certainly wasn't a given early on, but prospect wise, really kind of promising profile. So him plus opportunity, I think, should create something good here going forward, even if it's a little bit less than ideal for your redraft. I don't know. He was drafted in pretty much every best ball league, so maybe he could give you a little bit of rocket fuel here down the stretch if you make it to the playoffs in those types of formats. And then let's finish out. We got the Eagles and the Chargers. Obviously, the big question here: what version of Justin Herbert do we get, if at all? What if the version is Trey Lance?
That would be quite a twist. But yeah, I mean, I think Herbert will play. Probably he's really tough. He's in that category of guys, quarterbacks that are so tough that they're basically stupid for it. Yeah. But Justin Herbert can't really feel pain, apparently, so that isn't really a sufficient reason for him to not play. If he can't catch a snap, if he can't do a handoff, if he can't try to evade a pass rush without just falling over in unbearable pain at the first contact, those all seem ways that he could start the game and not finish it. I have no idea what his situation will be, though, with any of that. I don't know. Maybe there's some way they can numb the pain bad enough that good enough, I should say, that he just doesn't feel these things. But I have no hope either way, really, because the Chargers' offensive line is just so embarrassingly bad that it's like, what's even the payoff if he can play? Like, so that he can just get clobbered every throw anyway.
Right.
It's like, not that I mean to make it sound like there's no cost to going to Trey Lance instead, but I don't know. It's frustrating. And I know the Chargers made a decent enough effort at improving their offensive line. Some things just had a bad luck beat, but they still should have done more on the interior offensive line. They shouldn't have been like, well, we picked Joe Alt and now everything else is fine. Now it doesn't matter how bad our guards are and center is. It's like, well, what if Joe Alt and Slater get hurt? Like, well, then we won't be able to play for the rest of the year. And it's like, that's just kind of where they're at.
Yeah. So they are, as is kind of tradition for the Chargers, a team that is going to get ultimately the ceiling lowered on them by just really costly injuries. The bookend tackles both being hurt is just a brutal break of luck, and Herbert being limited, especially going up against this Eagles front. Like that, I have a lot of problems with the Eagles, but their defensive front, not one of them. Going up against this Chargers offensive line, like it almost for like the safety of Justin Herbert, it might make sense to go with Lance, but we'll see.
Yeah.
You answered the question here below, but just for the listeners, if you have Josh Jacobs, should you hold Emmanuel Wilson through the playoffs or pick up Bam Knight?
Well, I actually meant to respond to Jonathan's the question about Benson and everything, Trey Benson. And I think Trey Benson is very clearly a uniquely talented running back, but he also has a uniquely concerning injury history with the knee specifically. So for the Cardinals, if I was in charge of the Cardinals, I wouldn't want Benson playing this year. I would say he's our long-term starter, but we have nothing. We don't need to evaluate him right now. His knee needs recovery time. We can't screw this up. So I think Knight will continue to be the main guy for the Cardinals. I don't think Knight is particularly talented. I think last week will be his best game of the year. And as a Jacobs owner, I think you should hold on to Wilson if that one starting spot is all you really need to get where you're going. It only really makes sense to me to take up Knight over Wilson if you need an additional starter improvement, because otherwise, if you just need to consolidate, like Wilson, if Jacobs misses time, Wilson plays, and you more or less you have your starting spot assured. But if that's not enough, and if you need Wilson to start for you too, then clearly Knight would be the pick there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summation there. So it depends on your roster construction. Like, is this a starting spot consideration or, something to have in your back pocket if the opportunity arises? If Wilson does get a start here down the stretch, he's, pretty clearly a top.
And if Jacobs is out, if Jacobs were to miss a game, Wilson would definitely prioritize over Knight, no matter who the two opponents are.
See, exactly. So that's a good summation there. I think that's going to do it. I think that's going to wrap us up for this here edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. If you like what you heard and you aren't signed up at rotowire.com, you can fix that on the cheap. You can get 15% off any subscription. If you go to rotowire.com, use the code YouTube15. Again, that's 15% off any subscription. It gets you access to all of our tools, rankings, articles, all that good stuff, including that fancy Who Should I Start tool that I demoed earlier on in the show. Best of luck to everybody this week, crucial week. Get yourselves into the playoffs here, and we'll catch you next week. And then for your DFS interests, check out the DFS episode that'll drop in your podcast feeds on Friday. Thanks for listening.